don't know me, I know many of you here. I am the chairman of Forward Alabama and Greater Birmingham Democrats. And we are proud, both organizations are proud to be part of the sponsorship of this event, along with the Homewood Hive and MAD, Make a Difference. We also want to thank Bob for letting us use this wonderful facility that we'll hear a little bit more of in a few minutes. Jennifer's going to say something about that. I've been asked to introduce this, and as typical of me, I've not planned anything. And I was thinking, driving over here in the car, what I would say, and I remembered something that I saw last night on TV, and it was from Jon Ossoff. None of us liked the results of that race. We're proud of what all those people did, and I'm sure there are people in this room who went over there and knocked on doors. Many of the people here did. But, it was still a great showing, and we should be proud. The thing that I am struck about, though, is Ossoff made a point to thank all of the women who turned out to help him. It was a huge part of his campaign. And I think that is so significant. I have said several times that I was in despair after the election. And it wasn't until the Women's March. I didn't go to Washington, but I was here in Birmingham. It wasn't until the Women's March that I got re-energized and felt like I could start doing things actively again and just get out of my mode of just throwing one foot in front of the other. And that Women's March was just so incredible here in Birmingham. 5,000 people here in Birmingham. I'm sure some of you were there. It was wonderful. And the role that women have taken in this resurgence or this resistance, whatever we want to call it, is absolutely significant and meaningful. And as a member of the other gender, I think it's time to give you all a chance. It is time. We haven't done the best. I haven't made the best of the situation. I think it's safe to say. So, I'm not going to say much about Greater Birmingham Democrats. We are here. We work locally. We are having a forum tonight, a wonderful forum on LGBTQ rights. We're doing it in conjunction with the Rainbow Caucus of Alabama Young Dems. They had done this program in February at UAB. Wonderful panel. It's moderated by Patricia Todd. Wonderful panel. And they just didn't get a big enough audience at UAB. It was already night, and so we brought it to Vestavia Library. We hope that you can come. It's open to the public. Forward Alabama, Greater Birmingham Democrats, is a founding member of Forward Alabama. Forward Alabama is certainly regional, and we're trying to be statewide. Mobile and South Counties are farther away than you realize when it's time to organize. But we do messaging and voter registration and candidate training. As a matter of fact, Pat Vandermeer, who's over here, does training for AAUW, and she trains for us, and it's going to dovetail with what Emerge is doing. So we do a lot of different activities. I have some, if you're interested, I have some information over here on the table. I would encourage you to go to the website and see everything that we do. We have been approached, we were approached because we've been at this a little while by Jennifer Greer with MAD, Make a Difference, and Kristen and Megan from the Homewood Hive, and they're going to have a minute to speak here in just a second. And we appreciate that. It was kind of done in the vein of, well, gee, you've been at this a little bit. There's no need to recreate the wheel. And we are trying to partner and do things like this. So that's the root cause of why we're here today. And we appreciate that. We appreciate that partnership very, very much. I won't go into the details, but we have plans to do practical, necessary field work here in this area and hopefully other areas to get candidates elected. And we've got to move from meeting in theory to actual practical, effective things to do. So, Jennifer, would you come up and
let me just Sure. I'd like to say good morning to all of you powerful and enlightened women and a few men in the room. I'd like to consider myself one of them. And I'd like to do a brief shout out. I have many friends in the room. Cassandra Woods is here today. I'm so glad she's here. Her husband is running for mayor, and their whole family and friends are supporting her. So thank you for coming, Cassandra. And also Mary Bohm, I hope it's okay to say, is running for the school board. And a huge sacrifice on her part, and I hope we can all support her and both of these women in their races, because it really takes a family and community to support all of them. Briefly about this house was built by Molly Brown and her husband William, and they were both from pioneering families that came down from South Carolina with a mule and a wagon and came over the hill and farmed the area before there was a Birmingham. And when Molly married William, they decided rather than farming, they would start a general store for the farmers in the area. And as iron was manufactured in Birmingham, there was more demand on the store, and they became the first department store owners in Birmingham. They, if you're down at Bamboo Restaurant on First Avenue North, there's some condos being built across the street, a historic building, and that was the former W.S. Brown Mercantile department store. Later, their shop boy bought it, and his last name is Massey, so some of you might know Massey Mercantile. They're on a trust bill right now. But when this house was built, they moved into it when they were 65 and 70 years old. And they called it Rest Haven, and they wanted to basically party until they dropped. Their children were raised and married, and they built this home with an open floor plan to entertain. But then their daughters inherited the house and eventually sold it to the Alabama Federation of Women's Clubs, which you all might be familiar with. But the American Federated Women's Club was the first progressive women's movement in America. And back in the mid-1800s, it was socially acceptable for women of means to be unchaperoned by a male if they were in a reading circle or a sewing circle. And so there are all of these circles around America, thousands of them. And some of the women said, hey, if we could just federate or have an umbrella over all of our small groups, and we were one large group, we could actually change policy. And Eleanor Roosevelt was a member of the Federated Women's Clubs of America. So right here where you're standing, many of the women got together, and there's one brief anecdote. They used, before they bought this house from Brown, the women in Birmingham used to meet at the Old Tutwiler Hotel, which had been torn down, not the one that we're with. And one day, one of the women said, ladies, we need our own clubhouse. We don't need to be paying these men rent. And I'm putting my money where my mouth is. I'm starting a capital campaign with 5 cents. And one of the other women stood up and said, I'll match you with 2 cents. So never think that something is too small when you're starting a movement. That's how it starts. So welcome, and I'm so glad you're here. This is what the house is all about.
Before we go on, I also want to mention 2 things that I forgot, and one of them is that we mentioned the Merge. Jamie is here with the Merge, and she will speak later on today for a couple of minutes about what a Merge does. It's a critical effort that I'm sure many of you are familiar with. And then also, leaning up against the wall is Spencer Foley. He is the field director for Planned Parenthood here in Birmingham. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, I just wanted to tell you a little bit about MAD. I'm also going to fly here. I need to tell you that in just a minute. MAD, question mark, make a difference. And we're a huddle, a women's huddle, that formed on, I guess it was November 9th, 2016, the day after. and it wasn't like that we haven't been concerned about progressive and women's values for a long time. Especially here in Alabama, we've had really a one-party government since 2010 with no checks and balances, and I think we've seen a lot of the negative results of one-party government. And but anyways, we were sort of organizing. Right now, MAD is a women's lunch club. We're a professional women's lunch club, and we meet on South Side at either Surrey West or Jim and Nick's, depending on how many calories we want to consume. But and we meet once a month, and if you want to be on the mailing list, we'll put you. You're already on the mailing list if you've registered today. But what our goal is to educate women as citizen activists. Okay, we don't really, most of the MAD members don't self-identify as candidates, although I hope candidates will emerge from our group. But we more self-identify as citizen activists that really have a sense that our values, we are working hard, we are paying taxes, we are raising families, and our values are not being shown in any public policy, and they are being dissed on a daily basis, okay? And they may be female values or women's values or women-friendly men's values, but anyways, and what I'm talking about are health care, quality, affordable health care for all families, not just the families of Congress, for example. Why can't we have access to the same kind of health care policy that Congress has? All right, they take care of their families. Why can't we have a chance to take care of ours? So, and then public education, equal justice, good jobs. So those are the kinds of things that we see as really family values and community values and workplace values that we're not seeing translated into public policy. And so we get speakers once a month to come talk to us at the lunch, and we engage with the speakers. And most of the speakers that we get are not really issue-oriented speakers. They're more like politics speakers. Because one of the things that the MAD members have realized is that we are fairly well versed in major issues that concern us, but we know, at the start of this, we knew nothing about politics. Okay, so we get folks like Bob Harper to come in and tell us about the inside skinny on Forward Alabama. We get people from the Democratic Party. We get Jo Ellen Beckett from Blue Dot. How did she start the Bright Blue Dot campaign? Last month, Diana Klein, who's running against Gary Palmer, came to talk. So if you're interested in kind of upping your awareness and knowledge of politics in Alabama and where are the levers of power and how do they work, that's really what MAD's about in terms of educating ourselves about that. And then also supporting women candidates and getting more women elected to office. That's what we're about. I'm going to pitch to Kristen in just a minute to tell you about the Hive, but I also promised the folks at Indivisible. How many here are with Indivisible, Birmingham Indivisible? I mean, a shout out to Indivisible. What an incredible group! Carol Griffin and Shay Reeves and all of the kind of the shock troops that we have that are really putting some pressure on these politicians in a way that gets them to maybe listen to even the more moderate voices and come to the table, or so we hope. But Indivisible is staging a healthcare sit-in starting Monday of next week, from Monday through Friday, 24-hour sit-in in front of the Vance building. There's more information about it on the MAD website and the Indivisible website, Facebook pages. But do consider participating and telling your story about healthcare, because it really does look like we've come to a make or break situation on healthcare for all American families. So go to the Indivisible or MAD Facebook pages and check out this opportunity. And there's literature in the back room too on this particular event. And also, Jamie Elliott with Emerge has got some literature, so get a chance before you leave to get to the back and see the T-shirts and some things back there, and also see the rest of this gorgeous facility. So, Kristen, you want to tell them about the Homewood Hive?
Sure. Hi, I'm Kristen Rizak, and I'm going to give a shout out to Megan Cheek, and you'll just stand up and say hello. But we're with the Homewood Hive, and that stands for Huddle, Inquire, Validate, and Enact. So Megan and I, after the election, were talking, we're in a little bit of despair, especially after the immigration ban came out, and we started a little huddle, and it was kind of seedy. We met in the back of Wheezy's Candy Emporium. 40 women showed up. We were blown away. We kind of shared our stories. We all had similar feelings, and so from that we had just kind of we named ourselves the Hives. Mostly it's women in the Homewood area, but we open them to anybody who would like to join us. We meet, our meetings have lately been at the Homewood Library. And we are, a common theme that we had as women were, how do we talk to our neighbors? Because I had an Obama sign in my front yard and nobody said anything to me. A few would say, yeah, but nobody, there was just no discussion. But then after Trump won, I was walking my child to Edgewood Elementary, and everybody's faces were down, they were looking at their shoes, it was so quiet, and still nobody was talking. And a lot of those people have now joined our huddle, and we're starting that conversation, we're learning. So our very first meeting was, how do we just talk about it? You know, we don't want to be confrontational, but we all pretty much have the same feelings and views. But how do we just talk and express our concerns, and how can we make our community better? So if you all would like to join, you could, you know, see our Facebook page. We can add you that way. We can add you to our email list. But it's a great vibe. I see many fellow Hive members here, but we're trying to do just local actions in our community, state actions, and then we've been calling to senators on a national level. But that's a little bit about us. Thank you.
I think it's time. I'm going to ask Pat Vandermeer to introduce our speakers for today.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'll be sort of brief and let them spend more time talking about themselves, but I'm going to start with Councilor Scales. She's a two-term incumbent of the Birmingham City Council. She's also a native of Birmingham and lives here with her husband Michael and two beautiful daughters. She graduated from Jefferson State Community College and Harvard's Kennedy School's 21st Century Leadership and Economic Growth Program. In her 2 terms in the City Council, LaShondra has shown leadership in the council and in her community. Several years ago, there was a group that was working on raising the minimum wage in Birmingham, and LaShondra was a great proponent of this. And I want to tell you a quick little story about it. There was discussion within the council about raising the minimum wage, and Councilor Rafferty said, well, if we raise the minimum wage, then people won't get their benefits, and they won't get food stamps. And LaShondra immediately spoke out and shot her down and said, people don't want to get these things. They want to be able to take care of themselves. They want to have a living wage. So she was a big advocate for that, and we're really thankful. Unfortunately, the state legislature shot it down. She's also very deeply involved in her community. She's a counselor that people in her community know her. They know that she cares and is working hard to make things better. So thank you for being a part of it. Next to LaShondra is Felicia Stewart. She is running for Alabama State House District 46 in the state of Faulkner. We've got this person who took down the minimum wage. Felicia is a native of Alabama, growing up in South Alabama, where she graduated from Spring Hill College. She now lives in Mountain Brook with her wife, Christy, and 2 wonderful daughters. There's a thing here going on. I met Felicia several months ago when she was first deciding to run for office. And as she was telling me about herself and what she felt she could bring to the table, you know, I was so impressed and continue to be impressed with what she's already accomplished.
I can understand why you think that, because I've lived here 30 years and I'm only 35. Alabama is my home and my heart, and I'm very blessed. My town here is very hard. 5 years ago, living up in Westlaw, a student fellow high school asked me that. She was the principal at first said, oh, yes, we saw the video of the perpetrators, and yes, Because in the second part, asking how did this happen and why did this happen, I realized that I raised all 4 of my children in Alabama school, public schools, all 4 of them K-12 education. And I never knew that there were children in schools, in the same public school system, were not getting the same quality education, that were not safe education. I was taking these things for granted. And so once you realize something, you can't unrealize it. And I had a job. I had my own business in Huntsville. I was not fulfilled with it any longer. So once I started my research and studying education, I cared less and less about my business. And I was very blessed that my husband saw that I had a spark and that I had a passion. And he said, just do what you have to do, we'll figure this out. So I did. I studied almost 24/7, every waking moment. I was talking about education, I was reading about education. I was helping teachers who were not getting the support that they needed to actually teach in the classroom. And I met on several occasions on panels I sat with and down in Montgomery talking to legislators. Richard Franklin, who is from Birmingham, of course, he's president for the teachers union. And so in this meeting, on several occasions, he finally said, we need to hire you because we felt and thought so much alike. The union stance, my stance, Richard's stance. So I was blessed. I said, hallelujah, yes, yes, yes. And I sold my house, my business. I moved to Birmingham, and I've worked and lived here for 3 years. And I've got to tell you, I feel more comfortable here and more positive about the changes that can be brought about in education here in Birmingham than I've ever been in Huntsville. And that's the honest truth. And that's because on our city councils and on our school board, there are still people that fight for what's right. There are still some people that fight for what's right. In Huntsville, I have to say that wasn't necessarily the case. The school board and council walked like that, and they had no concern for the children on the north end, the black and brown children, the high power children. That's why they're still under a desegregation, and they're having trouble taking out the number. So I came to Birmingham. I met so many like-minded people, and I have found my place. And this sounds very weird, but I'm going to tell you, Birmingham City Schools has so many positive things going on. And the reason y'all may have trouble believing that is because nobody will tell you that. Because they want to portray Birmingham City Schools as a bad school system. The reason they want to is because the people from outside Birmingham that are perpetuating that are hoping to profit off of them. So what I want to do, see, they brought all my worlds together, this job, and hopefully taking my voice to the next level as a school board representative. It's brought all my passions and all my feelings together, and it's just been a perfect storm. And that's why I say I feel like you, because I let go. I thought I was being responsible running this business, and my higher power was saying go over here where there was no guarantees. But my heart told me that's what I need to do, because that's what I love and that's what I want to do. And I do have the skill set to help create difference in education, not only in Birmingham, but in Alabama. And so I'm blessed to be here, and blessed. Thank you for having me, Pat, and everybody else. And I really look forward. I always get excited when I talk about education. So I really look forward to listening.
Told you. Jennifer talked about the MAD lunches every month, and this one's very different. We're not at CERN, we're not at Jim and Nick's. And we have a panel discussion, and we've talked about the change agenda, that what we want to see is change. Change in our community, change in our city, change in our state, change nationally. And so Jennifer came up with the idea, well, why don't we do some special events, lunches like this, and we call it the Change Agenda. And today is our first one. We hope to have more in the coming months. And today it's Change Agenda, Women in Politics. And talking about change, the question I want to ask each of you is, and Chandra, you've already had a chance to affect change, but going forward, what are one or two things that you, when you're reelected and when you two are elected, are you going to work to change?
Well, I can tell you one of the things I've already changed. If you all recall, in 2015, President Obama came to Birmingham. You're better than me, right? Okay. Well, that came from a little old council member in my first term. I took on the payday and title loan industry because I hate payday and title loan, period. Why is that, Councilor Scales? Because they take advantage of the working poor. And so because of that, I remember going to Washington, speaking of change, I remember going to Washington and I was talking, being that voice that says, something's not right about this. This is a multi-billion-dollar business. And yet, we have them just proliferating in Birmingham. You couldn't go to any shopping mall. Of course, the kids started going to home too. And so what I started doing is I take a television camera, because I do marketing and media too for a living. And I just set up shop, and we do the news right there in front of the payday and title loan place. Okay? And so they got really ticked off, because if you know about politics, and one of the things that will come against real policy changes is the fact those who actually benefit financially from it. So we had lobbyists who make a lot of money and from the state, and then guess what I found out? Some of the state legislators, they own these title loans and all these kind of folks. So wow, really, that's why you're trying to change the law. So with that having said, now where I am with payday and title loan, because I don't know how y'all feel about President Obama. I love President Obama. And not just because he's black. He still had a white mother with an Indian father. You cannot tell folks and show you who's one between the other. Okay? All right. So I love President Obama because to me, he represented a level of class that I haven't seen in politics in a long time. And it was that change. And one of the changes that I liked about President Obama is that he did not interject his personal feelings in order for policy to be the driving force. Does that make sense? So when he came to Birmingham, he was talking about Birmingham had more payday and title loans than any McDonald's in Alabama. Okay, Birmingham did. So to answer her question in short, now I'm taking this fight on to the federal government. Because we can't just stop there. We want to put a cap. We have established a database on the state level, but I'd like to see the day where you can no longer receive 400+% on a title loan or a payday loan. We want to get that cap down. And if it's left up to LaShonda Scales, I want to run them out of town because I think that they're the next thing closest to the mafia. Okay? Now, my second thing that I'd like to do is primarily why I'm here today. And I know that this is so God for me because I thought I would never be a voice for women. And why would you say that, LaShonda? Because, can I be transparent with you? Do you all mind? I hope you ask me a lot of questions too because I do like that. To me, women, I think that we can kind of get off into things that don't matter. You know? For example, what are you wearing? Who are your friends? What purse do you have? Do you like the garden club? Do you like, see, I'm not made up that way, okay? And so my thing was, for me, getting women out of the mode of stop being so wimpy and be strong and be what God made you to be because you are a leader in your own right. And I have found that most women are more critical of one another than we are with the men. And y'all know that's true. You might not want to shake your head, but that's true. Okay? Because we believe that it is a God-given right for a man to be in certain places of leadership. Like, for example, Birmingham. I chair the Governmental Affairs Committee. The first thing I start working on, because you all may not know this, in the city of Birmingham, all of our laws are written for men. Did y'all know that? You did? Well, really, I did. So when I started reading laws, and I thought kids, and he, and seriously, that's what we've been in at. So that's why I'm gang-banging on the fellas. We have 5 male council members, and we have 4 women. And I'm determined to be the biggest voice on the council. So, in short, that's my answer. I know I kind of took you a little bit around, because I hope you all won't just smile at us. You're going to ask us some good questions.
For me, I'll start with more principles that I hope to change, and then I'll talk about a couple of policies that I'm certainly interested in. In my experience, again, as a business person, my primary responsibilities the last 20 years were to grow business, so to increase revenue, to constantly problem solve for a diverse and changing workforce and customer base, and to engage key stakeholders to understand how to best meet the needs of a changing marketplace. And I think those are skill sets that we need and that are not present on any grand scale at the State House today. So taking those skill sets and applying them to the principles of transparency and good government. For example, I'm sure many of you have spent some time in Montgomery. It's a daunting thing. Thankfully for me, my experience is going down to the State House and watching hearings and debates, and I use the overused air quotes because if you do that, you will see there's not meaningful debate. There's not somebody who says, I'm proposing this bill because I studied this bill and it was put in place in Missouri in 2010 and the outcome was X, and we can get the funds from here and do this thing and it will have an outcome of Y. There's none of that. There's none of that. And I hate it. I'm not somebody who does an always or never. I hate generalizations. But in this case, it's apt. There's just not enough debate, dialogue, research, examination, comparing and contrasting. And part of that is not enough diverse representation across the board with races, certainly with sexuality, with gender. 14% of our state legislature today is female. So studies show you need at least the critical mass of a third to meaningfully change the dialogue. And then certainly we would aim for parity at 50% to have a true representation of where we are. So those are some of the things from a government communication and activity and principle standpoint that I would like to immediately address in changing our position on that. And then from a couple of policy standpoints, things like the grocery tax. I think that is such an easy thing. Again, I try to bring things from a business perspective. In some municipalities, people pay an additional up to 10% for their groceries. And if they had that 10% to buy more groceries or to pay for gas, they're not these anecdotal stories about them using this money for these nefarious things or another tattoo or an extra cell phone. I mean, that's not valid research. That's not real data. These people are struggling, and 20% of our state live in poverty, and many more live close enough to the level that you're talking about a quarter of our population where 10% of their income would just be handed back to them. They're going to pay their growing utility bill. They're going to buy gas and groceries and school clothes. And so this is an economic decision, both for compassionately helping the least of these, but also reinvigorating the economy in places where it's been so devastated. So the grocery tax, I think, is one easy way to accomplish that. And then I know that we're probably going to have a little session on this, so I'll just touch on it briefly. But the education subject, which is vast, is, again, for me, from a business perspective, an easy problem solver. Let's talk about education just specifically in prisons. 61% of American prisoners have an 8th grade education or less. 61%. So think if that 61% had 4-year-old pre-K available to them. Think if they had concentrated effort to make sure when children are tested for literacy readiness in the end of 2nd grade that everybody met that metric. 30%, 80% of Birmingham City School students do not. So what if we had pre-K 4 for all those people? What if we focused on the 2nd grade reading where those skills start to develop? And that 61% came down to be crazy. Even 40% were less than or more educated. Think of the economic impact on that. That's workforce development. That is family unity. That's an increased tax base. That's a lot of things. That's less Medicaid and less food stamps and less incarceration costs and not buying new prisons and building new prisons. There's a business case for all of these things, and we have to have a willingness in Montgomery to have those conversations.
Of course, I know I talked about but the financial accountability, there's definitely problems there. I have a stack of contracts this deep that I've been going through for a couple of years, trying to figure out what contracts are open, what ones are closed, what do we owe to who. Have we maybe bought that curriculum twice now? Are we really using this program that we have bought and kind of sort of giving professional development for, but didn't follow through? Are we getting our money's worth? So that's the kind of thing I enjoy research. So I'm delving into that already, and I enjoy that. So yes, the accountability, discipline. Again, we need to follow through on what we do. We have a program called PBIS, Possible Behavioral Intervention and Support Intervention Systems. I always forget the S. But it can be a wonderful program if you implement it correctly and fully and you get buy-in from everybody. There's not been that commitment from central office, from the administration, to get the buy-in from the people in the schools. So again, that is something that in general, just let's follow through with the things that we've started. But I have to say, one of the biggest things I want to change is mindsets. I want to change mindsets, not only what people think of Birmingham City Schools, but also the mindset about what education is now. Because education is different now than what it was before. And many people want to make you think that education, our public schools are failing. But the truth is that legislatures and decision makers are failing our public schools. So I started to support our students in order to disseminate this information. It's called corporate reform. It's about privatizing our public schools, and so people can benefit from them. It's a long, complicated thing that I can't go into now as much as I'd love to. But I do have a Facebook page to support our students, and I encourage you to look at everything and learn more about it. But so that's what I do. I disseminate information because I believe that there's a lot of good people out there that don't know better, just like I was. I didn't know. And so I want to share this information. I want to change mindsets. I want to get everybody that I can on board to really bring the community together and turn Birmingham schools back into our neighborhood and community schools, because that is the only way that we will succeed on a large scale. So, again, that's my biggest challenge. I think it's going to be meeting people. I'm going to be out in the community. I'm going to have my meetings every month and get the community involved.
Great, thank you. Before I turn it over to questions from all of you, the title is Women in Politics of this panel. What have you seen as running as a woman, and you've done this before, you're just starting, that is different? Are you treated differently? Do you approach it differently? Do people react differently because you're a woman running for office?
Well, the only way I can be is very transparent with you. Politics is a very male chauvinistic kind of profession. Only the strong will survive. Okay? I listened to my sweetheart here, and I said, bless her, I'm going to school her, so because David and I were in leadership Birmingham together too, okay? So I'm going to school her. You know why? Because when I first got there, I thought 2 + 2 mathematically makes 4. I learned in politics 2 + 2 is really 10. And you said, what do you mean by that, Rashonda? Because I realized that you taking your business savvy, which I'm a business owner myself, and I said, well, hey, this is a simple answer. I mean, really. And then I realized that in politics, someone told me, politics is filled with many tricks. The object of the game, LaShonda, is don't you get tricked by the politics. So when you see simple answers to obvious problems, and everybody seems to struggle with it, it's just like we talk about Birmingham City Schools, and we know the perception is there. We know all that. So I was like, well, why don't you just get another PR person? I mean, you know, who can tell your story better than the person who's over director of communications? But I learned that the board members didn't want to get rid of the person who was there. And I thought, well, that's crazy. So a lot of things that I have seen as a woman in politics is that everything boils down to, oh, she's just being emotional. Oh, she's just saying that because, you know, she's angry, especially if you're black. You know, I don't know why why we have to be angry and black. You know? but it's always a thing of you're so in your feelings. I think probably one of the most things that when I was most offended by with the Hillary Clinton campaign is when someone, and they happen to be blacks. I talk about black folks because I'm black now. You talk about black folks. But now, there was this rapper, and I'm kidding with you, but I'm serious too. There was this rapper that culturally in the black community, we all know, and he said that he couldn't vote for Hillary because he couldn't have a woman over him. I'm thinking, are you crazy? You, as a woman, I birthed a male and a female child. And you telling me when the majority of us, I'm not single parented, but too many of us statistically are raising you. And surely you say, well, you can't teach him to be a man. Well, I won't be too far from it. Because guess what? Women know how to survive. And so that's one of the things that I can tell you as a woman in politics. I've had to, my dad said, eat cheese and stuff, but let's just say I've had to really downplay sometimes my own personality because I'm just being honest with you. I'm very raw. I'm not rigid, but I'm raw. If it's not right, I just say, hey, you know, that's not right. And I'm not going to compromise on that. So now I'm kind of like, oh, okay, LaShonda, just shut your mouth until you hit the home run. Get the home run, and then we start running our mouth. Does that make sense? So chauvinistic is one of the things that I saw and see in politics, that men always try to put us into this compartment. You the woman, shut up and stay in your place. The other thing I would say as a woman in politics is that I think that women don't support one another enough. And the only way that we're going to get beyond that, I have to value you. It's one thing when a man doesn't value me. And how many of you all, as women, it hurts you more when a woman doesn't value another woman? That's hurtful. And so I'm trying to make my answer short because I got somebody that's helping me trying to make my answer short. But I won't tell him he's sitting over there. But I will tell you this, that I hope that a part of our conversation today is that as a woman in government, we need you. We need you. We need your support. And even if you think that we're doing wrong, don't try to kill us, but just take us to the side and say, listen, I want you to kind of work on this, that, and the other. Because we don't all have the same personality. I don't expect her or this sweetheart here to have the same monotone that I have, the same thought process that I have, but I still can love her as a sister and embrace her and lift her up and say, when you fall, I may not like what you said, but I got you covered. We don't do that in politics. I think as women, we're the first to browbeat one another, and it's very unfortunate. So those are the two things. Male chauvinism, women don't support one another enough. Risha?
Certainly this is my first foray into politics. Who's the party foul? I wasn't here for that. I have been fortunate so far. We are very early in this process, so I have only put myself in a position to be with wonderful women and supportive crowds. So I have yet to be put in groups with a little bit more diversity. So I've had great experiences in the last couple of months as we started this process. I have been warned, though, that I'm more likely to face some pushback. The gay thing. So we're waiting for that to happen at some point. And as long as they're willing to talk about my gay agenda of job growth and but in my career, I have certainly experienced some of the same issues as you. Mostly back to my notion around expectations. I've worked with some wonderful, professional, educated, articulate, terrific guys. I truly have. But I've also experienced the you're too loud and on the expectations thing. I can remember three, and I won't name them, but three pivotal people in my life who have told me that my expectations were too high in work and in other categories of life. And I remember those three gentlemen, and I remember those three conversations, and I thought to myself at those times, and I've frequently replayed that in my head, would that have been a conversation with my brother or my male counterpart or another colleague boss, etc. And so I have persevered and maintaining high expectations. And I think when people tell you that, that doesn't mean you lower your expectations. That means raise theirs. And that's certainly what I'm trying to accomplish. So I would say, back to the 14% of the state legislature that's female, that we need a wider range of voices across the spectrum. And, you know, there's that Lean In research study. One of the data points that I found valuable in that is that men, when they think they're about 60% equipped to take a job, they raise their hand and say, I'm ready. Certainly our president felt that way. Women, we have to feel 100% ready. We really second guess ourselves. We really we have to feel like we have 100% of the skill sets required for a certain opportunity before we do that thing. Which means there's a lot of qualified women out there doing things that they're probably well beyond. And it means we need to get over that. And you have to push your own boundaries and get out of your comfort zone. There are lots of parts of this whole thing that I'm not loving. This level of spotlight is a new thing for me. But if it helps me accomplish the end goal, which is driving change in the state that I love, then we're going to get through this together. So don't wait for the 100%. I would advise anybody or your colleagues, you may be thinking about something like this. Push your boundaries and put your name in the hat. We need you.
I got a quick follow-up question, if I can. Is your mother, twin daughters,
Yes.
finished kindergarten, and man decides to run for office and has kids that are just going to be in first grade? No one thinks about that. No one says, oh, I don't know if he should run for office because he's got 2 kids. Have you found anything like that?
I haven't, honestly. I've had a lot of moms ask that. You know, and I don't know if any of you are fans of Amy Poehler. I certainly am. And one of the key data points from her book was, good for her, not for me. And to Lashona's point, I'm going to take that position on women's choices. I want you to have a choice not to work. If you want not to work and stay home with the kid, good for you, not for me. You know, I want my colleagues and friends to support me in that way. That if I want to quit my job and give up my 6-figure salary and go to zero and wonder where our next paycheck is coming from to run for office in a state that may not be ready for me, good for me, not for you. You know?
Have you seen anything that's running for a woman like you?
I have not yet, and I don't know that I will necessarily, because education is predominantly a female profession, and so I don't think it's really outside the norm to be a woman. But I do want to say this: I have some women living around me for 30 years, and so I know how this works. And I do want to say this: I was raised by a mother, a single mother. She had 6 kids, and I am a strong, independent woman, and I don't back down. I stood at a public hearing in front of the House Education Committee and called out Ed Henry because he had berated a female speaker right before me for something her boss had done. So I made my speech shorter, and then I said, and by the way, if we're going to call people out for their bosses, then I think y'all, we were talking about the charter case. So I said, and I think this charter bill is null and void, and we need to throw it out because of the indictments that Mike Hubbard is going through right now concerning education. And so I get a lot. I did in the beginning, the first couple of years when we got I got a lot. Who are you? Who are you? And it wasn't enough to say, I'm a voting citizen. You know, I felt they wanted a title behind this. They wanted to be able to put me in some kind of box. And I didn't give in to that. And I refused to feel less than because I don't have titles or things behind my name. I know who I am and what I stand for. And so I'm not going to back down. I think the advice that I would give to anyone that's going to run, the first thing you need to do is close your mouth. When you close your mouth, you need to sit back and you need to watch. You need to observe. You need to figure out the landscape before you dip your toe in, because it's very easy to make mistakes.
Great, thank you. Any questions?
How do you respond, and how do you plan to respond to mansplaining? How are you going to persist nevertheless?
What What was your question? You said mansplaining?
Where the men talk over you and try to shut you up in meetings, and how do you respond to that?
Do you keep up with me? Because let me just tell you something. Ms. Woods is probably going to love this. About 2 weeks ago, the mayor said I got on his last nerve. And he said it during council meeting. And so, I told you I do public relations, right? And I can become an absolute nightmare for you if you do that to me. So I just said, really? And he didn't say it on the microphone. Now in the back of my mind, I said, okay, now would he have said that to a man? No. So I got on your last nerve. So I'm going to tell you what I did. And ladies, y'all said forgive me in advance, okay? Because I did what we do as wives all the time to our husbands or significant other, okay? So here's what I did. I said, did I hear what you just said, Mr. Mayor? I get on your last nerve. Now, women, y'all get it. You knew exactly what I was doing. I was talking to you. That was my way of saying, okay, you're in an election year, and you told a woman she get on your last nerve. So I just drilled it in, and so if you love William Bell, I'm sorry, okay? But I drilled it in and then I came back and I said, well, I get on your last nerve, and I kept saying it very slowly, because women, we don't like that, right? So we get offended. But hell has no fear, like a woman's scorn, right? So I said it like 10 times. Get on my last nerve. And then I said, well, if I get on your last nerve, then go tell my citizens in my district, because you the mayor. I'm not the mayor. You the mayor. You get it? Now guess what happened? Women got so excited about that video. They said, well, who else do we need to be voting for? Because I like what he talked about. I was like, mission accomplished. That's my point. If you overlook me, I don't always have to be the tallest voice, but I've learned how to systematically make it work for me. Sometimes it may be talking. Sometimes it may be I'll thank you. And I always tell people, my dad said this, and I'm going to be quiet on my little point. I cried one day. I had a client. He was a man. Bless his heart. And he said to me, 9/11 had happened, and he had, I told you I'd come out of the entertainment business, so these entertainers were in an airport. I didn't care. I mean, I wanted my check, okay? Because he had not paid my little company. And so I called him, and I mean, he cursed me out. Oh, God. I sat there. I'm sure women, you've had that experience where a man can talk to you so rough. You're doing everything to hold back the tears. I don't care how strong you are. When a man speaks roughly to you, it does something to your spirit like nothing can. I'll never forget my dad told me, he said, LaShonda, and I said, yes, sir. I thought he was going to pet me. My dad said, LaShonda, you in a man's world. Do you understand that? So get over it. And I thought to myself, because my dad has been an entrepreneur, I'm 46, he's been 44 years. And I thought to myself, really? Is that the way you're going to talk to me? And I'm your daughter. But you know what he was doing? He was saying, LaShonda, get over your feelings. Start standing up for yourself. I didn't quite take it that way. I had to look like you all like, really, he said that to you? No. But what he did, he made me grow up. And so, ladies, you all forgive me when I give this graphic illustration. And men, y'all just love me for it, okay? But I've been growing a penis ever since. And so, when they don't hear me on the council, that's okay. She's going to learn this trick. I just go over and whisper to him, and I say, now, you know I got a penis, don't let me use it. So that's what happens. Sometimes it comes out audibly, and sometimes it comes out strategically. Does that make sense? But you're going to know I'm in the room. That make sense? Did that answer your question? At least I made you laugh. I mean, you got that wow factor on your face. I bet you won't forget it.
I don't think under any circumstance that would benefit me to say that.
Well, let me tell you why trying to get it across, they would always say, you know, you fine in that red dress. And boy, that burned me up, you know? So one day, one of the council members told me how fine I was, and I leaned over and I whispered, now you don't have to do it, you're going to do it eventually, you just saying that for now. I leaned over and I whispered in his ear, I said, okay, my penis is long, and I wear boxers. And he looked at me, he was like, Scales, you crazy. I said, don't you ever say that to me again. Because if I were a man, you would never say what you're saying to me. And what you just did, you diminished what I was talking about to she's a woman. Does that make sense? So now, I don't expect you to have my same bravado. But when I start hearing in the back of your mind, I might need to grow a little penis. That's okay. We'll get together and I'll hook on you. And then I'll just say, now you get it. That means we're getting some tough skin. And we're not letting men compartmentalize us away from our original agenda. That makes sense?
Time for really one more question.
Okay, so Alabama is ranked by metrics as one of the worst states in the country for women. We also have extraordinary economic inequity. So one of the problems with women running, obviously, is that the money is not in the state to support women to run, right? And it's sort of a vicious circle, because until we have more women in places of influence who then have the money to support other women, to bring them up behind them, we cannot very well elect women with money we don't have. And we're all collecting money from each other all the time. Okay, I work in the nonprofit community, spent 10 years in Washington, D.C. Alabama is horrific for raising money. So what I'm asking is, we have another problem, which is pay to play. Alabama is straight up pay to play. My family has a business that has been paying legislators for many decades to do their bidding. That is the way it works across our corporate, the utilities, the monopolies that we have that are unnatural and natural, the utilities and Blue Cross Blue Shield. I do not dislike anyone in any of those businesses. I'm sure lots of your families have been supported somehow by Alabama Power or Alagasco or Birmingham Water or Blue Cross Blue Shield. I get that. The question is, how do you change the status quo if you continue to take $250 from those people in a campaign and then have to do their bidding when you get elected? So are women going to be different than men are going to be in that respect, is what I'm asking.
Yeah, this is something I had to think about quite a bit, because there are organizations that are the alpha. I will not take money from them. I will not take money from the BCA. And the reason is because they work against what I do. And so I can't with integrity take money from those folks. So I do have my list of no-nos, okay? But we need to look outside of Alabama. Who said people from other states can't give us money? I'm a part of a network with 60,000 people across this country. They are supporting me. I'm hoping that when I need financial help, that I'm going to get it from them. So we just got to think outside the box, and we don't have to feel like, I mean, under no circumstances will I take money from those people. And so I've got to stand on that and have faith again. I'm on a path that I feel I'm meant to be on, and that it's going to work out.
Would you want to take us to the finish?
Yes, I'll answer that briefly too. It's a very difficult thing, because specifically in my district, I've gotten estimates that I'm going to need around $150,000 to pull this off. And my campaign account currently has $1,700, so very little job. And clearly we're just getting underway, and we have 18 months, and I have had people come up, individuals who are already doing good things and good money to take. But ultimately, I will be approached, and that'll just be a case back. I am not into the dark money. I know what it's done to politicians. But I think the main problem is people take it for two reasons. One is because their goal is to be a politician. I'm getting into this because I want to be governor or the next U.S. senator or what have you. Or because they want the money that comes with that. I've given up the money. I was in corporate America. I chose to do this. So if I get in there and I take 10 grand from somebody and they ask me to support this bill that I do not support, I will not support it. And if they pay my competitor the next time and I get voted out, that's just part of the game to me. I will not sacrifice
a comment, not a question, and it's this. To your question about the corporate money, we've got a room full of women. Probably everybody here has a job. Women don't typically, I think, donate a lot of money to these kinds of causes. No offense to anybody in this room, you may or you may not. But we have to be, if we're going to be serious about getting a place at the table, we have to dig in our pockets just like the guys do. So that's we've got 3 great candidates, 4 or 5, and we need to support them financially as well as being here in this room.
Thank you, Joella. Let's have a hand for her. Campaign hats for them this summer. And just remember, if you don't know about the bright blue dot, that's Joella Beckham, and this is we're blue dots in a red stake, okay? And this is kind of giving us some solidarity, and it's a fabulous website, Bright Blue Dot. If you don't know about it, go check it out and get your stickers or t-shirts or your cap.
If you don't mind.
Sure.
I asked Ms. Peck, and I don't want to interrupt you. Ma'am, you didn't touch her.
Ma'am?
Okay. Here's your short answer. I told her that I'd do it in 60 seconds. Y'all can tell I like to talk. Okay. Grassroots, I don't take their money. I outwork them. I'm the first African American to represent my district, and I have yet to put myself in a position where I had to depend on the corporate community. Because women talk. We are a soapbox. We know how to talk on that phone. We don't know how to do anything else. We know how to organize. And so even if you don't have a lot of money, you don't have to have a lot of money. You just outwork them. And then you put yourself in a position where you can be as vocal as I am, because now you don't owe yourself to the business community, and you can speak to those issues that are near and dear to our hearts. And that's the way you stay fresh. Grassroots, outwork.
Bravo. We've been doing that for a long time. We know how to do that. Okay, we're going to switch out. Jamie Elliott from Emerge is going to close our program today and give us an update on Emerge Alabama. Tell you what it's about. I think if you are interested in supporting women candidates, or if you self-identify as a woman candidate, Bob McKenna named a couple of women candidates. How many folks do we have here that are running for office? Can you just raise your hand? Okay. So we're going to do this again in 6 months, and I hope we get more hands. But anyways, Jamie is going to tell us about Emerge. Do you want to watch out with Pat? Are you following?
I know everybody's in a hurry. How many of you have heard of Emerge? Good, quite a bit. So Emerge is a national organization that has existed for 10 years. This is not something that started because of the election, but our involvement has started because of the election. They apparently got a lot of petitions after November to join. Emerge, the essential breakdown of what Emerge is training Democratic women to run for office. And not just a weekend, 70 hours of training. And they have to raise the money to get into the program, because that's the first hurdle. If you can't raise the money to get into a program to run, you're not going to be able to raise the money to run. They spend, the point is to get a state group of women who have run to sort of be a backup network. We're trying to create a pipeline of women so that in 25 years we're not where we are now. Real quick, this graphic, and I'll have it back here at the table, disturbed me when I heard about Emerge. This blue, as you know, blue is Democratic. This is 2008, and look where we are now. This is how it's slowly gone, not just president, not just the high offices, every office. And I was curious about this, and I looked it up, and I read an article that was written in 2015 that said if we don't start paying attention as Democrats to our city council, to our local government, we're not going to make any kind of change at all. Who cares about president? That's all we've been showing up. And so Emerge is trying to train a pipeline of women, and it's 25 women per state per year, to run and win the local, to get the confidence to start this pipeline. Then they step up and we bring in the next round. And so we've got this long line of women who know how to run, who now know how to, affect change. And that's what we want. We are excited to announce that we just became, 3 weeks ago, the 20th state. Officially, we beat out several other states, including the state of New York, who to become an official group. You have to be a certain to do that, and we've raised the money. Our goal at the end of this month is 50,000. We're at 45,500 right now. We have announced that we're going to hire our one person who's going to be our staff in the state, because you don't want to get out of hand. So we have had several candidates. If you're interested, you can see me. Basically, we want to make a change. This is positive. One thing positive, since everybody's been down about yesterday. Last week, in the state of Virginia, 11 of the 13 eMERGE alums who were running for the primaries, 11 of the 13 won. Buy 100% of the profit from the t-shirts goes to eMERGE, and then if you want any information, you can come see me. Thank you.
What happened with the primary? That was not a fluke. They have been winning races, I think 70% of the time.
The 2016 election
this
is
program
70%.
win. So we really have to thank them, and women need to be thinking about that. Thank you so much.
That's it. Thank you so much for